Imagine sitting in a hearing room expecting another dull back and forth between politicians and instead watching the walls shake as years of secrets pour out. A whistleblower with more than 2 decades inside the intelligence community broke the silence, and what followed was unlike anything Washington had seen in years. The allegations weren't just about office gossip or bureaucratic squabbles. They were about leaks of classified information, altered reports, and a coordinated effort that reached the very top of America's intelligence agencies.
Welcome everyone to today's hearing on oversight of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is the first occasion for the committee to get back together since the tragic death of Charlie Kirk. Charlie was a good man, a happy warrior who fought for principles and values I think make our country special, and certainly was a strong proponent of defending the First Amendment, something this committee cares deeply about. I said this over the weekend. I think Charlie lived that scripture verse, 2 Timothy 4:7, fight the good fight, finish the course, keep the faith. Charlie certainly lived that, and he did it with a smile on his face. And so the tragic killing happened a week ago while we were in markup here in the committee. And I know everyone, our witness was a friend of Charlie's, and I know many people in the dais were as well. So I know we're all praying for Charlie's family. And I would extend a moment to the ranking member if you wanted to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for saying that. The whole country reacted with horror and shock to the brutal assassination of Charlie Kirk in cold blood. And there is never any warrant for political violence in America. And just as we all recoiled together at the shocking assassination of Melissa Hortman and others who died in that Minnesota attack, we all stand together categorically against political violence in America and determined to end these cycles of political violence that have traumatized the country.
Well said. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Schmidt, to lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As is customary, we will begin with opening statements. 5 weeks ago, because of the work of Director Patel, we learned that the former chair of the House Intelligence Committee and current United States Senator leaked classified information. We learned this because a whistleblower came forward. Whistleblower with 23 years experience in the intelligence community, a Democrat staffer on the committee, said this: they were pressured to leak classified information, which sort of raises the obvious question. Why would the head of the Intelligence Committee, the chair of that committee, who's supposed to be guarding our secrets, why would he be encouraging the leaking of classified information? Whistleblower told us that answer as well. The leaked information was supposed to be used, the leaked information, false information, was going to be used to indict President Trump. Now, the former chairman wasn't the only person leaking information. Jim Comey was also sharing things he wasn't supposed to share. Again, don't take my word for it. The Inspector General told us this. In his report, he said, quote, James Comey violated FBI policy by disclosing classified information. And what was Comey's motive? Same as the senator from California: to sabotage and undermine President Trump's first term. And we know that Mr. Comey's not been shy about what his objective was. In fact, 4 months ago, he told us. Remember this? 8647, Jim Comey told us just 4 months ago. Now, how'd they do it? How did the former chair of the Intel community, the former FBI director, and others in our government attempt to undermine President Trump's first term? 7 weeks ago, because of the good work of the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, we learned from another whistleblower, a second whistleblower, that in the closing days of the Obama administration, the intelligence community assessment was changed. On December 5th, 2016, they had one assessment. That assessment said Russia did not impact the election vote count. There was a meeting at the White House on December 9th, 2016, where it was decided, no, we're not going to have that. We're going to come up with a new one. And the new one said Russia was trying to influence election and did influence election, which just wasn't accurate. And that new one is published on January 6, 2017. Let's just show you a few things that took place. I want to show you first this email from Admiral Rogers, the head of the NSA. You can see it was December 22nd. It says to Jim, John, and Jim Clapper, John Brennan, Jim Comey. And he says, I asked my team if they've had sufficient access to the underlying intelligence, sufficient time to review that intelligence. On both points, my team raised concern. Further states, my folks aren't fully comfortable. A few hours later, there's an email back to Admiral Rogers. This one is from Jim Clapper, and it says this: it is essential that we be on the same page and all of us are supportive of the report in the highest tradition of, that's our story and we're sticking to it. We may have to compromise on our normal modalities. This is one project that has to be a team sport. That's our story and we're sticking to it. Compromise on normal modalities, that's a fancy way of saying, that's the government speak for we're going to have to change the rules. In fact, we're not going to follow our own rules. And that's exactly what they did to get the objective they wanted, to undermine President Trump. Now, how did it specifically take place? The whistleblower said that the government officials ignored concerns about discredited information. And what was that discredited information? What was the discredited information that they didn't ignore the concerns about? What did they use, that discredited information? Of course, it was the dossier. The now famous Steele dossier that was paid for by the Clinton campaign when they hired the law firm Perkins Coie, who hired Fusion GPS, who hired the foreigner Christopher Steele, who wrote all this garbage and lies down. That is what was used to change the intelligence community report. And what happens next? What do Jim, John, and Jim do next? They go to Trump Tower on January 6, 2017, to brief then President-elect Trump about the dossier. Again, the Clinton-financed, foreign-authored dossier that the whistleblower knows is garbage and that they know is garbage. And then there's one final step. One final step. Jim Comey leaves that meeting with the president and immediately leaks to the press that they briefed the president on the discredited information. They briefed the president on the dossier and thereby giving it some credibility and creating the basis and the predicate for all they did to the president. They leaked false information, they leaked classified information, they used and leaked discredited information, and they didn't follow their own.
And as Congressman Jim Jordan laid it all out, the room went from tense to stunned. For the first time, names long considered untouchable were being called out in public, and the evidence was impossible to ignore. The story begins with that whistleblower. 23 years of experience inside the intelligence world gave this person credibility that few could question. They weren't just speculating or tossing around conspiracy theories. They testified that the former chair of the House Intelligence Committee pressured them to leak classified information. The job of that committee is supposed to be protecting the nation's most sensitive secrets. But here the accusation was the opposite, that secrets were deliberately being fed out to serve a political purpose. According to the whistleblower, the leaked information wasn't even accurate. It was doctored, false, and designed to set up indictments that could shake the foundations of the government. And this wasn't some isolated incident. The revelation didn't just expose one man. Another familiar name quickly entered the picture: former FBI Director James Comey. For years he'd projected himself as a guardian of integrity, but the Inspector General's report told a different story. It revealed that Comey violated FBI policy by disclosing classified information himself. This wasn't rumor or speculation, it was an official finding. And what was his motive? According to testimony, the same motive as the senator from California: to damage the president's first term and derail his administration before it even found its footing. What made this more shocking was that Comey himself hadn't exactly been shy about his intentions. Only a few months earlier he openly admitted what many had long suspected, that his actions weren't just about duty but about shaping political outcomes. The idea that two of the most powerful figures in intelligence had stepped outside their official roles and allegedly coordinated to manipulate events was enough to leave even seasoned observers stunned. But as explosive as that was, Jordan's case was only just beginning, because one whistleblower wasn't the only voice to come forward. A second whistleblower entered the story, this time linked to revelations uncovered by the Director of National Intelligence. Their testimony pushed the timeline back to the waning days of the Obama administration. In December 2016, the intelligence community had issued an assessment. That assessment concluded that Russia had not impacted the vote count in the election. The report was straightforward and, for a brief moment, final. But within days, a secret meeting was held at the White House. Behind closed doors, it was decided that the report wasn't enough. The narrative had to be changed, and changed it was. By January 6, 2017, a new report appeared. This one claimed that Russia had not only tried to influence the election but had succeeded in doing so. The alteration wasn't minor, it flipped the conclusion entirely. The integrity of the intelligence process designed to remain above political agendas suddenly looked compromised. But if that weren't enough, the paper trail added another layer of intrigue. Admiral Mike Rogers, then head of the NSA, had written to his colleagues, Jim Clapper, John Brennan and James Comey, warning that his team hadn't been given enough time to review the underlying intelligence. They weren't confident, they weren't comfortable. Hours later, Clapper shot back with an email that still raises eyebrows today. In it he wrote, "It is essential that we be on the same page. This is one project that has to be a team sport. That's our story, and we're sticking to it." In other words, unity over accuracy, appearances over truth, and perhaps most damning, a quiet admission that bending the rules was necessary to achieve the desired outcome. What exactly were they bending the rules to support? That answer led directly to one of the most infamous documents in modern political history, the Steele dossier. This file, commissioned through law firms and opposition researchers, was funded by political campaigns and ultimately pieced together by Christopher Steele, a foreign national. From the beginning, critics called it unreliable, filled with unverified claims and outright fabrications. Yet according to the whistleblower, officials inside the intelligence community knew this too. They knew it was garbage, but they used it anyway. The climax came on January 6, 2017. Just as the new intelligence report was being released, senior officials briefed the incoming president at Trump Tower. The Steele dossier was front and center, and almost immediately after that meeting, James Comey leaked to the press that the president had been briefed on the material. The dossier, once considered little more than political gossip, was suddenly elevated to a matter of national security. With the press now legitimizing it, the stage was set for years of investigations and headlines. A single document, long dismissed as discredited, had become the foundation for a narrative that dominated the nation. Jim Jordan's presentation in the hearing room pulled all of these threads together. The leaks, the altered reports, the dossier, all part of a pattern that painted a chilling picture. A picture of powerful insiders using the tools of government not to protect the people, but to pursue personal vendettas and political revenge. And when Jordan finished laying it out, silence filled the room. The man at the center of these allegations, once one of the most powerful committee chairs in Washington, offered little in defense. His silence spoke louder than words. Jordan didn't stop there. He connected the revelations to a broader issue of accountability. He praised the work of Director Kush Patel, crediting him with helping expose years of corruption that otherwise would have remained hidden. Patel, he argued, wasn't just shining a light on the past. He was actively reversing damage, rescuing exploited children, removing predators from the streets, cutting waste and restoring a sense of purpose to agencies that had long lost the trust of the American people. It was a contrast. Jordan wanted everyone to see leadership focused on politics versus leadership focused on justice. And in that contrast lay Jordan's real message. Institutions can recover, accountability is possible. But it requires pulling back the curtain on the uncomfortable truths that many in power would prefer stay buried. The explosive testimony and leaked documents weren't just about one hearing or one set of names. They were about reclaiming trust in a system that depends on honesty and integrity at its highest levels. By the time the hearing ended, it wasn't just Adam Schiff's credibility that had been shaken, it was the credibility of an entire era of leadership. Years of whispers, rumors, and quiet suspicions had been dragged into the light in a single session, and the message was clear: no matter how powerful the players, no one can hide from the truth forever. That's the story Congressman Jordan delivered, not as a partisan talking point, but as a challenge to anyone who thought secrets could remain buried. For viewers across the country, it was a reminder of how fragile trust can be, and how dangerous it is when those sworn to protect it instead choose to break it. And now the question is yours to consider: if this is what one hearing can uncover, what else lies in the shadows waiting to be exposed? If you found this breakdown eye-opening, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video so more people can join the conversation. Because the story doesn't end here, and together we'll keep following the trail until the truth can't be hidden anymore.